Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some ancient wisdom today.
Sounds intriguing.
Oh, it is. We're going way back to the Yellow Emperor's classic of internal medicine.
A classic.
It really is. It's like a guide, a medical manual from ancient China. Almost like, imagine you could listen in on a conversation between the Yellow Emperor and his physician, Chibo.
Wow, yeah, like a fly on the wall, back in time.
Exactly. They talk about all sorts of fascinating things, health and illness, the body. We're focusing on chapter 4 from the spiritual pivot, specifically about something called evil qi.
Okay, evil key, that sounds pretty intense.
It does, doesn't it? But before we get scared off, let's unpack it. It's all about how this evil qi gets trapped in your body and what that does to you.
So it's not like a monster or anything.
Not exactly. To understand evil qi, we got to start with qi itself. What do you think of when you hear that word?
Well, in traditional Chinese medicine, qi is like this vital energy, the life force that flows through everything, right?
Exactly. It's what keeps us going physically and mentally. So evil qi is basically anything that messes with that flow.
Like a disruption, an imbalance.
Right. And that imbalance is what can cause all sorts of health problems.
Makes sense? So this evil qi, how does it even get into the body in the first place?
Well, the text suggests it's kind of opportunistic, like it looks for weaknesses, any way to sneak in, when your defenses are down.
Like when you're exhausted, run down.
Totally. Or say after a tough workout when you're sweating a lot, or even, a hot bath, your pores are all open.
I see, those moments when you're more vulnerable.
Exactly. And there's one place the text highlights as a major entry point. Your face?
Really? The face? Why the face?
Well, think about it. Your face is almost always exposed to the weather, the elements, plus it's full of pores. And those pores open up even more when you're tired, sweating,
So it's like an open door for this evil qi to slip in.
Precisely. Now, once it's in, does it just stay on the surface? Not necessarily.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
No, the text says it can travel, move through your body, along these channels called meridians.
Oh, the meridians, yeah. I've heard of those. Aren't they like pathways for energy?
Yes, exactly. Think of them like rivers or streams carrying qi all throughout your body.
So evil qi uses those pathways to spread. That's a little creepy.
I know, right? And it can affect both the surface and the internal parts of the body, what they call yang and yin.
Okay, yang is more external and yin is deeper internal.
You got it. And the text points out that your arms and legs are especially vulnerable because they have thinner skin, less muscle.
Less protection.
Makes sense. But what about the internal organs?
Right, like the heart, lungs, liver. What happens to those?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. The text links specific organs to certain emotions and even environmental factors. Like it says the heart is particularly vulnerable to grief, worry, and fear.
Wow, so our emotional state can actually impact our physical health.
That's what the text suggests, and it doesn't stop there. Each organ has its own set of vulnerabilities.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
Sure, the lungs, they're linked to cold, both from the weather and even what you eat and drink.
So bundle up and avoid ice cream when it's cold outside.
Right. But it's not just about temperature. The text says the liver is particularly sensitive to anger.
Anger, huh?
Yeah, it's thought to disrupt the flow of qi in the liver, causing it to stagnate like a traffic jam of energy. So holding on to anger could actually be harming your liver, according to this text. Interesting.
It is. But it's more than just emotions. The text also talks about how the environment can impact our organs.
Right. Like with the spleen, it's affected by physical strain, pushing yourself too hard. And even wind, especially after sweating.
Wind? That seems a bit random.
I know, but think about it. Wind can be drying. It can disrupt that balance of moisture in the body. And then the kidneys, they're weakened by excessive strain, overexertion, and too much sweating or bathing. Anything that messes with your fluid balance.
It's amazing how this ancient text recognizes the connection between our physical health, our emotions, and the environment around us. Like they had this holistic view of health way back then.
I know, it's so ahead of its time. And there's this one passage in the text that always blows my mind. You know how your face stays warm even when the rest of you is freezing?
Oh yeah, like when you're out in the snow and your cheeks are toasty but your toes are numb.
Exactly. The text explains that the face is like a central hub for all these meridians, making it rich in this yang qi, which is associated with warmth and energy.
So that's why it's so warm.
And not just that, the face also has thicker skin and muscles acting as insulation.
It's like a built-in heater.
Exactly. It's incredible how they observed these things and came up with explanations that still make sense today.
Totally. So we've talked about how this evil key gets in, how it affects different parts of the body, but how do they actually know if someone was suffering from it?
Well, the text describes both obvious and subtle signs. If someone was really weak, they might have chills, shivering, which were seen as clear signs of evil key.
That makes sense. But what about the subtle signs?
They talked about changes in complexion, but these changes were tricky. They were fleeting, unpredictable.
Fleeting, like they came and went quickly.
Exactly. Made diagnosis a real challenge. You needed a skilled healer who knew what to look for.
Like a detective of the body. So how do they go about diagnosing these subtle imbalances?
Well, they had three main methods: observing the complexion for clarity, examining the pulse for a deeper understanding of what was happening, and asking the patient questions, really listening to their experiences and symptoms.
That makes sense, taking everything into consideration.
Right. The text compares it to drum beats and echoes, how they have to align for the sound to be clear. Same with these diagnostic methods.
That's a cool analogy. But the pulse examination, that sounds intriguing. What could they learn just from feeling someone's pulse?
A lot, apparently. They believed the pulse could reveal a ton of information about what was going on inside the body.
Like what?
Well, for starters, they linked each color, green, red, yellow, white, black, to a specific type of pulse. And if they saw one complexion but felt a different pulse, it could indicate a problem.
Wow, so it wasn't just about finding a heartbeat, it was like deciphering a code.
Exactly. It took a lot of skill and sensitivity.
I bet. So how did they connect those different pulse qualities to specific ailments?
Well, they believed that each quality, whether it was tense, loose, big, small, had a specific meaning. For example, a tense pulse in the heart could indicate convulsions, while a loose pulse might suggest hysteria.
And those are just two examples.
Oh, there were many more. And even tiny variations in those qualities could point to different stages or types of an illness, all within the same organ.
Wow, the pulse really could tell a whole story. So did they use this information to figure out how to treat people?
Absolutely. Pulse diagnosis was key in determining the best course of treatment. For instance, it guided their use of acupuncture.
Ugh, the needles. I was wondering when those would come in.
They believed that by inserting needles into specific points along the meridians, they could influence the flow of kawar and remove blockages caused by evil ki.
It sounds like a very targeted approach. So each type of pulse would require a different needling technique.
Yes. They had to adjust the depth of insertion, the speed of the needling, even how long they left the needles in, all based on what the pulse told them.
It's fascinating how they developed such a sophisticated system. And it wasn't just about needling, right? The text also mentioned herbs.
You're right. If the pulse was very small, indicating a lack of ki, they wouldn't use needles at all. Instead, they'd prescribe herbs to nourish and strengthen the body.
A very personalized approach. So cool. This is all so fascinating. It really makes you appreciate the depth of knowledge those ancient healers had.
It really does. And it makes you wonder how much of this ancient wisdom is still relevant today.
That's a great question. I guess we'll have to keep digging to find out.
We will. But for now, let's take a break and come back to this amazing text in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good to me. I'm eager to learn more.
Yeah.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, are we missing something?
Totally. So we've talked about how this evil ki gets in, how it affects the organs, the diagnosis. But what did they actually do about it? How did they treat these imbalances?
Well, acupuncture was key, right? We talked about that. Using needles to stimulate the flow of ki, clear those blockages caused by evil ki.
Right. But was that it? Just needles? The text also mentioned lifestyle stuff. What kind of recommendations did it give?
It's interesting. It's not all about needles. The text emphasizes making choices in your daily life to support the flow of ki.
So not just treating the symptoms, but addressing the root causes through lifestyle changes.
Exactly. And the recommendations, some of them are surprisingly modern, like balanced diet, regular exercise, managing stress in a healthy way, even being mindful of your environment, avoiding places that drain your energy.
It's about cultivating a lifestyle that nourishes your mind and body, right?
It really is. That holistic approach, it's all over this ancient medical system. They understood that true health is about harmony on all these different levels.
Makes sense. But I gotta say, with all this talk of evil ki, it still kind of freaks me out a bit. Like, is there something out there always trying to get me?
I get it. It does sound a little ominous. But I think evil ki is less about some evil entity and more a metaphor. you know?
A metaphor for what?
Anything that throws you off balance, a virus, stress, junk food, bad weather, even your own negative thoughts.
So not something to be afraid of, but something to be aware of, to try and manage.
Exactly. Figure out what those things are in your life that drain you, disrupt your flow, and then take steps to minimize them.
Okay, that makes sense. So in a modern context, evil key could be anything from pollution to that never-ending to-do list.
Exactly. It's about recognizing what depletes your energy, throws you off balance, and then making conscious choices to support your well-being.
Just like those ancient healers said, it's amazing how much we can learn from these old texts. They offer a whole different perspective on health and wellness.
They do. It's fascinating to see how those ideas from thousands of years ago are still relevant today.
So if we had to boil it down, what are the key takeaways from this deep dive into the Yellow Emperor's classic? What should our listeners remember?
I'd say the big one is balance. Health is about maintaining balance within your body, between your body and mind, between you and the world around you.
It's not about fixing what's broken, but cultivating harmony on all levels. Love that.
And building on that, recognizing that everything is interconnected. Your emotions, environment, lifestyle choices, it all plays a role in your well-being.
It's not just what you eat, it's how you live your life. What you think, what you feel, where you spend your time, it all matters.
And finally, remembering that you have power over your own health. It's not about just accepting whatever happens. It's about making choices to support your vitality, your balance.
That's empowering. It's not about blame, but taking an active role in creating a healthier life.
Exactly. And I think that's a really crucial point.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. So much to think about.
It really has. And I think it's raised some important questions for us to ponder.
Definitely. So as we wrap up this part, what's standing out to you? What's that one nugget of wisdom that's sticking with you?
It's how the text encourages us to pay attention to those subtle signals our bodies give us. You know, the fleeting changes in complexion, those nuances of the pulse. It's like learning a new language of self-awareness.
It's like you're a detective, but of your own inner world, noticing those little clues that most people miss.
Exactly. And if you can learn to listen to those signals, maybe you can catch those imbalances before they become big problems.
Like preventative medicine at its finest. Not waiting until you're sick, but constantly checking in, adjusting as needed, a much more proactive approach to health.
Precisely. It's so different from how we often think about health nowadays, which is more reactive.
Yeah, go to the doctor when you're already sick, instead of focusing on staying well in the first place.
Exactly. And while modern medicine is amazing, I think we could learn a lot from these ancient approaches. You know, the emphasis on prevention, that holistic view of the body.
It's like combining the best of both worlds. The tech of modern medicine with the wisdom of these traditions.
Yes. And it brings us to this question. If our emotions, our environment can really impact our physical health like this, how can we use this ancient wisdom to change how we approach health today?
Yeah, it really makes you think. Are we overlooking those subtle things, the stuff this text talks about?
Maybe we are. I think we could all learn a thing or two from this ancient wisdom, you know?
For sure. Like, what are we doing for stress? Is our diet really supporting us? Are we moving enough? Or even just taking a moment to breathe, to really listen to what our body's saying?
Exactly. And it all comes back to that idea of balance, right? True health, it's not just about not being sick. It's about being in a state of well-being, physically, emotionally, maybe even spiritually.
I love that. It really resonates. It's amazing how this ancient text, it still feels so relevant today.
It does, doesn't it? It speaks to that timeless wisdom, you know? They knew back then true health. It's about the whole person, mind, body, spirit.
Absolutely. Our understanding of the body has come a long way since then, but I still think there's so much we can learn from these ancient perspectives.
I agree. That focus on prevention, balance, the interconnectedness of everything, it's so valuable.
It's a reminder that we have a say in our own well-being. We get to make choices that support our health, not just wait for things to go wrong. And we're part of something bigger, you know? Our actions affect not just ourselves, but the whole world around us.
Beautifully said. That's a powerful message to carry with us. And I hope this deep dive has sparked some curiosity for our listeners, maybe inspired them to learn more.
I hope so too. And to our listener, if you're intrigued by what you've heard today, I really encourage you to check out the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Internal Medicine. It's full of amazing insights that could change how you think about health and well-being. So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep seeking out that knowledge that helps us all live healthier, more balanced lives. Until next time.